Fire Slayers, how to make them good or at least fun. Wow, that's a question. I don't know if I don't know if there is a way. The problem is I find Fire Slayers themselves boring, right? Because they don't have a massive array of models to work with. So whatever you're working with, it has to be like existing stuff within the range. I think for a Warcry Warband to be fun or interesting, let's say, it has to have a gimmick, basically. And that gimmick itself has to lend itself to a playstyle that is interesting inherently, right? So let's take Pyre Ghosts, for example. We all know they are bad. Right? We know they're bad. Hopefully, at some point, Games Workshop will realize that also and like update their shit. But we know they're bad. But I like their gimmick. The gimmick is that they put down Pyre tokens, and that Pyre tokens are supposed to be this kind of indirect form of damage, and that your models don't have to do damage themselves because they have these Pyre tokens. So, like, my vision for Pyregeists, like when I read them and when I was like, oh, this could be interesting, and I was sorely disappointed. My vision was always that their Bale Guard, is it Bale Guard? The medium guys? I think medium guys. That the medium guys would want to be more tanky, as they got the toughness 5, but they don't have the wounds. So if they had something like 16 wounds, you can keep them at 130 points. I still think they would be fair at 130 points. You could have them at 16 wounds with not amazing damage profiles, but with the ability to do ability damage instead of actual physical damage. Because at the moment, a lot of Warcry is basically built around it's built around numbers, and can I just like push a whole bunch of damage from my thing into a thing? If the answer is yes, then I win. That's why stuff like Gut-Laws are so good, because they got that stupid 4/8 damage profile. That's why it's not 4/8, 5/10. Wow. They got that 5/10 damage profile, and that's why thingies are good, right? Vexmore is good because he's also got that damage profile, and he just runs into you and he pushes dice into a thing, right? But I always thought that there was a way that Games Workshop could do something different and something more interesting. I thought the Pie Guys were going to be it, but it never was. But anyway, back to my actual point. The gimmick, the gimmick itself of Fire Slayers is what? I think like their theming is so weak in Warcry that like I don't even know what they're supposed to do. They're just a bunch of naked dwarves, right? You've got Vulcan Flame Seekers, who I get it. I get what Vulcan Flame Seekers do. They're like Fire Slayers. Their whole thing is geared around turning crits into hits, not crits into hits, misses into crits, and that's how they do their damage. And they've got a whole bunch of extra movement tricks, that kind of thing. But Fire Slayers themselves, like I don't know what they do, basically. So I think the first thing for Fire Slayers and any kind of redesign, I put up a video that was a redesign of Ideneth Deepkin, and I kind of did them. I copied what they did in Age of Sigmar, basically, because I think thematically they're pretty good in Age of Sigmar. Like the theme is strong, and that makes them like this fast, kind of tricky buff debuff warband, right? And that's what makes them interesting. So I think the first thing to do with Fire Slayers would be to say, okay, what are Fire Slayers? What are they supposed to do? What is their reason? Their reason for being, right? And then you could go back and say, all right, how do these themes translate into an actual play style? Because at the moment, it's basically, here's a bunch of naked dwarves, we run at things, we do a bunch of damage. Yeah, we got fairly efficient chaff just by virtue of it being movement 3, but that's kind of it, right? They don't do all that much. Yeah. That's a problem with them. Who knows? Maybe at some point Games Workshop will go back and they will check it out and do some changes. I like what they did to. A lot of people hate when they did the Flesh Eater Courts, but I think what Flesh Eater Courts lost in just like raw numbers, they gained in like weird tricks and abilities, and I think they're way more thematic than they were. I do think like the Skinner kind of essential to that. But yeah, I like what they did there. So maybe they could, and I like what they did with Iron Jaws. So maybe they could do that with Flame Seekers and Deepkin and all these guys.